The Galactic Council of Intergalactic Affairs convened once again in the vast circular chamber aboard the starship Nexus, hovering in the neutral space between the spiral arms of the galaxy. As representatives from countless civilizations took their designated seats, one remained conspicuously empty. It was always the same seat, positioned between the Andromedan delegation and the silicon-based life forms from the Vega system, with a simple placard that read Earth in every known language of the galaxy. Ambassador Zerion of the Crystalline Empire adjusted his multifaceted form as he gazed at the empty seat. 10,000 years, he murmured to himself, and still that cursed chair remains. The light refracting through his translucent body created prismatic patterns on the chamber walls as he shifted uncomfortably. The opening ceremony proceeded as usual. Grand Marshal Zephyros of the Titan Federation, his forearms moving in practiced synchronization, called the assembly to order. His voice artificially enhanced to be audible to species with varying auditory ranges echoed through the chamber. Esteemed colleagues, we gather today to discuss the ongoing conflicts in the Outer Rim sectors. Before we begin, let us observe the traditional moment of silence for the empty seat protocol. The chamber fell silent. 1,000 different forms of life, gaseous entities, mechanical intelligences, insectoid, hives, and countless others all turned their attention to the vacant chair. Some trembled with recalled trauma, others with barely contained rage, and a few with something approaching respect. Commander Thix of the Aquatic Worlds broke the silence first, her gills fluttering with agitation. I still don't understand why we maintain this mockery. The humans aren't even members of this council. That's precisely why the seat exists, replied Dr. Mendak, the lead economist from the Trade Federation. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he accessed his vast databanks. To remind us of what happens when we ignore variables we don't understand. The tensions in the room was palpable. Every delegation had their own stories, their own encounters with the beings called humans. They were a young species, barely having achieved interstellar travel yet. Their influence rippled across the galaxy in ways that defied all logic and prediction. General Krax, the cybernetic overlord of the Machine Consortium, spoke in his characteristic metallic tone. Perhaps we should begin with the historical record, for the benefit of the newer members. His optical sensors focused on the delegation from the recently discovered Plasma Nebula Collective. Ambassador Leora from the Telepathic Union nodded, her ethereal form shimmering with agreement. The first Mars incident, Galactic Standard Year, 2387, the moment everything changed. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional representation of the Sol system. Mars appeared highlighted in red with various mining operations scattered across its surface. The Crystalline Empire had established legitimate mining rights on Mars. Zerion explained, his voice carrying the weight of old resentment. Our operations were efficient, organized, profitable. We followed all galactic protocols. The local system's dominant species, the humans, had barely reached their own moon. The display zoomed in on Mars, showing the methodical extraction of rare minerals by the Crystalline Empire's automated systems. We calculated that it would take them at least 2 centuries to develop the technology necessary for interplanetary travel. Our contracts were perfectly legal under galactic law. Then came the anomaly, added Dr. Kess, the Andromedan military strategist. Her tentacles writhed with remembered frustration. Without warning, without any logical progression in their technological advancement, the humans appeared on Mars. The holographic display shifted, showing primitive human spacecraft arriving at Mars. They looked absurdly obsolete compared to the sleek vessels of the galactic civilization's fusion-powered rockets held together with what appeared to be metal plates and determination. They didn't make contact through proper diplomatic channels, Thix continued. They didn't announce their intentions. They simply arrived. General Vec of the Warrior Caste pounded his massive fist on the table. And then they did nothing. They planted a flag, collected some rocks, and left. We spent months trying to understand the strategic significance. Our best military minds analyzed every possible angle. The flag, whispered Ambassador Yoon from the scholarly collective, was made of fabric in a hostile environment. It served no functional purpose. The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence as each being recalled their own attempts to understand this first human action. The humans had achieved something that should have been impossible with their technology traveled further than they should have been able to, and then done nothing strategic. Our response protocols assumed conquest, Dr. Mendak added. We prepared for war, for annexation, for some form of intelligent acquisition of resources. Instead, more humans arrived and repeated the process. They placed more flags, collected more rocks. Some of them even played games. The word games sent ripples of confusion through various delegations. The concept was alien to most galactic civilizations where every action served a purpose in the grand strategy of survival and expansion. The Proxima incident makes the Mars situation look rational. Commander Thix observed, her tone growing darker. The holographic display shifted to show Proxima Centauri, where a different drama had unfolded. The insectoid Hive and the Silicon Collective had been at war for 3,000 years over the Proxima system, explained Hive Queen Zach, her multitude of voices harmonizing into a single communication. It was a perfectly balanced conflict. Each side knew the other's capabilities, strategies, limitations. The mathematical probabilities were stable, agreed Node Primary 7742 of the Silicon Collective, speaking through dimensional vibrations. War projected to continue for another 2,000 years minimum with acceptable resource consumption rates. Then the humans arrived, General Crax stated flatly. The display showed human ships, even more primitive than those that had reached Mars, appearing at the edge of the Proxima system. This time, however, they didn't just observe. They sent a message, Dr. Kess recalled, on every frequency simultaneously. 3 words: why are you fighting? The question had been so fundamentally simple, so divorced from the complex geopolitical realities of the 3,000-year conflict that both sides had been momentarily stunned into silence. We attempted to explain. Node Primary 7742 continued. 3,000-year summary transmission, historical context, resource allocation matrices, territorial sovereignty principles. The human's response was... Hive Queen Zach paused, her voices struggling to form the words. That's dumb. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Even now, decades later, the casual dismissal of millennia of careful military planning and strategy struck each delegation as fundamentally unnatural. They then proceeded to position themselves between our fleets, General Vec added, in tiny ships, with weapons that wouldn't dent a civilian transport. Our analysis suggested they had suffered some form of collective neurological failure. Dr. Kess continued. No rational species would place themselves in the crossfire of 2 superior civilizations. Here, number roll. So we continued firing, Hive Queen Zach admitted. Around them. We assumed they would flee when they realized their error. They didn't flee, Node Primary 7742 observed. They waved. Ambassador Leora's form flickered with remembered emotion. Our telepaths detected no hostility, no strategy, no fear. They were genuinely greeting us in the middle of active warfare. The psychological impact was devastating, admitted Dr. Mendak. Both our civilizations had spent centuries dehumanizing each other. Suddenly, there were these irrelevant beings treating us like we were neighbors having a loud argument. Commander Thix leaned forward. Tell them about the broadcast. The chamber's display activated once more this time, showing a transmission log. The humans began broadcasting to both fleets, explained General Crax. Music, stories, something they called memes. The memes were particularly disturbing. Node Primary 7742 added. Data packets containing humor with no strategic value. They served no purpose in advanced warfare goals. They also broadcast their news, Hive Queen Zach continued. Apparently, while developing the technology to travel here, they were also engaged in recreational activities, sports, entertainment, art. The concept sent waves of confusion through the chamber. Species achieving interstellar travel typically required the dedication of entire civilizations, the focusing of all resources toward a singular goal. Yet the humans seem to have developed this technology while simultaneously having fun. The war ended, Dr. Kess stated simply. After 3,000 years, it just stopped. Howe asked a representative from the Plasma Nebula Collective, their voice a harmony of electromagnetic frequencies. We couldn't continue, admitted Node Primary 7742. The humans had introduced too many variables we couldn't calculate. Their presence changed everything. They weren't trying to stop the war, General Vec added. They were just there, being themselves. It was somehow more effective than any military strategy. Ambassador Zerion's prismatic form cast new patterns as he shifted. This brings us to the Congo Accords. The display showed Earth for the first time, a blue-green marble spinning in the void. After the Proxima incident, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to invite humans to join us as full members, explained Dr. Mendak. Every civilization agreed it was the logical response. The invitation was declined. Grand Marshal Zephyros continued, his forearms spreading in a gesture of bewilderment. Declined, the Plasma Collective representative asked. They refused membership in the Galactic Council. Not exactly, Commander Thix clarified. They said thanks, but we're good. The exact words. After changing the balance of power in two major galactic conflicts, they expressed gratitude and politely refused. We increased the offer, admitted Ambassador Zerion. Full membership, advanced technology sharing, preferred trading status, access to the galactic defense networks. Their response was to ask why we all lived so far apart, Dr. Kess added. They suggested we should visit each other more often. Visit, repeated General Krax, his mechanical voice, carrying an undertone of something like confusion, as if crossing galactic distances were equivalent to their social calls. Hive Queen Zach buzzed softly. They then extended an invitation for us to visit them for a barbecue. We spent considerable resources determining the military significance of this barbecue and prompted the Plasma Collective. It appears to be the controlled combustion of organic matter for the purpose of consumption. Node Primary 7742 explained. In social gatherings, with no strategic objective. The chamber fell silent as this information was processed. The idea of advanced civilizations gathering purely for social interaction without conquest or alliance building was difficult for most species to comprehend. The Tau Ceti intervention was the final confirmation, Dr. Mendak stated. The empty seat protocol was established immediately afterward. The display showed the Tau Ceti system where the mechanical hierarchy had been preparing to harvest a planet of its resources. Standard resource extraction. Explained Code Lord Nexus of the mechanical hierarchy. Uninhabited planet. No strategic value to any known civilization. All protocols followed. The planet contained certain crystalline formations that were of minor interest to us, added Ambassador Zerion. Not enough to claim, but sufficient for a small mining outpost. The Gaseous Federation had identified atmospheric resources suitable for refinement, contributed Speaker Wisp from that delegation. So 3 civilizations with legitimate claims beginning systematic harvesting. Summarized Grand Marshal Zephyros. Efficient, organized, legal. Then the humans appeared. General Vec continued. No claim, no legal standing, no resources they could even use. They landed on the planet, Code Lord Nexus recounted, and began what they termed a protest. Protest against what? Asked the Plasma Collective representative. We couldn't determine, admitted Speaker Wisp. They sat in front of our equipment, They carried signs with incomprehensible statements. The display showed images of humans holding various banners. The messages were baffling. Save the pretty rocks. This planet matters. And most confusing, think of the space whales. There were no whales on the planet, Dr. Kess clarified. In fact, there was no life whatsoever. The planet was geologically dead. We attempted to explain this to them, continued Code Lord Nexus. We provided detailed surveys proving the planet had no ecosystem to preserve. Their response was that it looked alien. Ambassador Zerion recalled his prismatic form darkening. They said the planet looked sad and lonely. The chamber absorbed this information with varying degrees of incomprehension. The attribution of emotions to celestial bodies was beyond most species' ability to process. We offered to relocate our operations, admitted Speaker Wisp. Surely they would understand reason. They thanked us, General Vec continued, and said it was super cool of us to think about it. Then they didn't move. The protest lasted for 3 standard months, Dr. Mendak added, during which the humans established what they called a space station. It served no apparent function beyond housing their protesters. It had amenities, Code Lord Nexus observed with mechanical confusion. Recreation areas, art galleries, something called a comedy club, all in space, all serving no strategic purpose. Other species began to arrive, Commander Thix noted. First as observers, then as participants. It became the most visited planet in the galaxy, Hive Queen Zack admitted. Beings came from across the spiral arms to see the human protest. Tourism. Dr. Kess said the word as if it were a foreign concept. They had accidentally created tourism. The chamber stirred as delegates recalled their own civilization's fascination with the human protest. It had become the galaxy's first truly multicultural gathering with species that had never spoken to each other sharing what humans called snacks and stories. The economic impact was unprecedented, Dr. Mendak continued. The barren planet became a hub of galactic trade and cultural exchange. We hadn't intended to create a cultural center, admitted Ambassador Zerion. We had simply wanted to extract resources. The humans transformed a dead planet into a living symbol, observed Ambassador Leora. Without planning, without strategy, through sheer spontaneity. And this Grand Marshal, Zephyros announced, is why the empty seat exists. The chamber's attention turned back to the vacant chair. It seemed to hold more weight now, representing not just an absent species, but an entire paradigm that the Galactic Council couldn't fully comprehend or predict. The empty seat protocol, explained Dr. Kess, requires us to consider the human factor in all military and strategic planning. But they're not even here, protested a newly arrived delegate from the Quantum Collective. That's exactly the point, Commander Thix replied. They're always somehow involved, not by choice, not by design. They just appear. Our wargames now include a randomization protocol called the human element, General Vec admitted. It introduces completely illogical variables into strategic planning. Code Lord Nexus processed this information. Sample scenarios include an irrelevant species decides the conflict looks unfair. Someone feels bad for the planet, and the smaller army gets sympathy support. These scenarios have no basis in military theory, added Hive Queen Zack. Yet they have proven statistically accurate when humans are involved. Dr. Mendak accessed his vast databases. Since the establishment of the empty seat protocol, galactic conflicts have decreased by 78%, not through human intervention, but through the prediction of potential human intervention. It's the most effective peacekeeping mechanism in galactic history, admitted Ambassador Zerion grudgingly, and it's based entirely on the unpredictability of a species that refuses to join us. Speaker Wisp manifested visible confusion. They still haven't joined the council. Last month we sent another invitation. Grand Marshal Zephyros confirmed. Full membership. complete galactic citizenship, access to all technologies. Their response was a polite thank you note, Commander Thix continued, and an invitation to something called Space Eurovision. We're still analyzing the strategic implications of Eurovision, Code Lord Nexus admitted. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. Each civilization had learned through direct experience that humans operated on principles that defied standard galactic logic. They had changed the course of wars without meaning to ended conflicts by simply existing in the space between them, and transformed dead planets into cultural centers by deciding they looked sad. Ambassador Zirion called a voice from the Quantum Collective. What is the current status of human space exploration? The Crystalline Empire's representative consulted his data. They have established colonies on 7 planets and 12 moons within their system. Their technology remains inconsistent. Inconsistent how? Asked Hive Queen Zach. They have developed faster than light communication, Dr. Kess explained, which they use primarily to share images of small domesticated animals. They've achieved matter transmission, added Speaker Wisp, which they use to deliver food to each other. They've created artificial intelligence. Node Primary 7742 continued, which they mostly employ to play games against themselves. The delegates absorbed this information with various expressions of bewilderment. The humans possess technologies that some galactic civilizations had spent millennia developing. Yet they use these advances in ways that served no apparent strategic purpose. We've also detected something concerning, Dr. Mendak announced. Human spacecraft have been observed heading toward the neutral zone. The neutral zone was a region of space that all civilizations had agreed to avoid, a stellar nursery where new worlds were forming, protected by galactic treaty to allow natural development. Surely they're aware of the regulations, protested the Quantum Collective representative. They are confirmed, General Vec. We sent them detailed documentation about the protected status of that region. And their response prompted Grand Marshal Zephyros. They said it sounded super interesting and asked if they could just look around. Commander Thix replied. They promised to be careful. The chamber erupted in various forms of distress. The idea of humans looking around the neutral zone was terrifying to species that understood the delicate balance required for proper galactic stewardship. This is precisely why the empty seat is essential, Ambassador Leora declared. We must factor human involvement into our response to this situation. But what could they possibly do in the neutral zone? Asked a delegate from the Metallic Consortium. According to our models, Dr. Kess began consulting her computational array. The possibilities include establishing a wildlife preserve, teaching emerging life forms, games attempting to make friends with stellar phenomena, or creating art installations using entire star systems. Surely those suggestions are excessive, the Quantum Collective representative insisted. 3 months ago, Code Lord Nexus informed the chamber, humans created what they called a music video, using the aurora of a gas giant as a backdrop. They didn't ask permission. The gas giant now receives 4 million tourists annually, Dr. Mendak added. The humans accidentally created another economical hub. And they keep all the profits, someone asked. No, admitted Speaker Wisp. They established something called a gift shop that sells small replicas of the aurora to visitors. The profits fund education programs for children of various species. The chamber fell silent again as delegates contemplated this information. The humans had transformed unauthorized use of a natural phenomenon into a galactic education initiative, seemingly without any long-term planning whatsoever. Perhaps we should discuss our response options, suggested General Vec. Military intervention is obviously impractical, observed Hive Queen Zag. The last 3 civilizations that attempted to use force against humans ended up adopting human refugees and teaching them advanced technology. Diplomatic protest has proven ineffective. added Ambassador Zerion. They respond to our formal complaints with recipes and invitations to cultural events. Economic sanctions are impossible, Dr. Mendak continued. They don't seem to understand our trade systems and keep sending us gifts instead of payment. What kind of gifts? Asked the representative from the Plasma Nebula Collective. Last month, we received 10,000 units of what they called friendship bracelets, Commander Thix explained. Made from repurposed Starship hull material. They somehow managed to make them aesthetically pleasing. The insectoid Behis Faruv received a shipment of honeys, contributed Hive Queen Zach. It wasn't from any known food source. Our analysis suggests they created it artificially because they thought we might enjoy it. We received a collection of mathematical proofs presented as poetry, added node, primary 77742. It was oddly affecting. The chamber buzzed with similar stories. Every civilization had received unexpected gifts from humans' offerings that served no strategic purpose, but somehow addressed cultural aspects the aliens hadn't known they were missing. This brings us to today's proposal, Grand Marshal Zephyros announced, the motion to establish a preemptive diplomatic mission to the neutral zone. The plan is ambitious, Dr. Kess began. We send a joint delegation to meet the humans at the edge of the neutral zone. We attempt to understand their intentions before they act. Previous attempts at understanding human intentions have been unsuccessful, reminded Code Lord Nexus. True, admitted Ambassador Leora, but we've learned to ask better questions. Instead of what is your strategic objective, we now try what seems fun to you. That's our intelligence keyword, explained General Vec. Fun. It's the closest universal translator equivalent to their motivation driver. We've identified 17 different types of human fun, Dr. Mendak continued. Each type predicts different behaviors and potential outcomes. Can you provide examples? Requested the Plasma Collective representative. Exploration fun leads to discoveries that they share freely with everyone. Speaker Wisp began. Creation fun results in art music or stories that somehow become culturally important to multiple species. Competition fun causes them to attempt impossible achievements. Added Commander Thix, usually resulting in technological breakthroughs they give away freely. Social fun creates gatherings that accidentally became vital diplomatic meetings. Continued Hive Queen Zach. And then there's Chaos Fun, Code Lord Nexus concluded ominously. That's when they do things because no one knows why. The chamber collectively shuddered at the mention of Chaos Fun. It was responsible for some of the most baffling human interventions in galactic history. Our current classification suggests the neutral zone situation falls under exploration fun with possible chaos fun elements, Dr. Kess reported. How do we prepare for chaos fun? Asked the Quantum Collective representative nervously. We don't, admitted General Vec. We just make sure our insurance policies are comprehensive. I believe Grand Marshal Zephyros announced it's time to vote on the proposal. All in favor of establishing a preemptive diplomatic mission to the neutral zone to intercept human activities. Various forms of affirmation rippled through the chamber. Lights flashed, tentacles, waved harmonics aligned, and probability matrices shifted to indicate agreement. Motion carried unanimously, declared Grand Marshal Zephyros. The mission will launch within 7 standard days. As delegates began to disperse, many found their attention drawn back to the empty seat. It stood as a reminder that somewhere in the galaxy, a species existed that could change everything through sheer unpredictability. They had rejected membership in the galactic community, not out of hostility or superiority, but because they were apparently happy where they were. Ambassador Zerion lingered his prismatic form, casting slowly changing patterns on the chamber walls. 10,000 years of civilization, he murmured, and they taught us that sometimes the best strategy is no strategy at all. Commander Thix approached her aquatic environment suit, creating gentle bubbling sounds. Do you think they know? Know what? The effect they have on us, the way their very existence changes how we approach everything. Ambassador Zerion considered this. I suspect they would find it amusing and probably invite us to a party to celebrate. A party, something humans do when they're happy about things, usually involves excessive food and music. Perhaps Commander Thix mused, that's what they're planning in the neutral zone, the galaxy's largest party. The thought sent a chill through Ambassador Zerion's crystalline matrix. A human party in the neutral zone could accidentally become anything: a trading post, a cultural exchange center, an interspecies celebration, or something entirely unprecedented. We should warn the mission leaders to pack formal attire, he suggested, just in case. As the chamber emptied, the empty seat remained. It had become more than a symbol. It was an active force in galactic politics. Every decision made at these tables, it had to account for the human factor, the possibility that somewhere in the vast galaxy, a species guided by friendship, curiosity, and fun was about to change everything again. The seat weighed empty, but its influence was felt across the stars. It reminded every civilization that in a universe full of logic, strategy, and carefully planned expansion, the most powerful force might just be a species that does things because they seem like a good idea at the time. And somewhere in the Sol system, a group of humans were indeed planning something for the neutral zone. They called it the ultimate space picnic, and they were very excited about it. They had no idea that the entire Galactic Council was mobilizing in response to their plans. After all, someone had suggested that eating sandwiches while watching new stars form would be totally awesome. The empty seat would continue to wait a silent tribute to the power of the unexpected. Because in a galaxy where every action had been calculated and every outcome predicted, the humans had taught everyone the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best things happen when no one knows what they're doing. And that was why there would always be a permanent empty seat at every war table reserved for Earth, only, not because they were invited, but because they might show up anyway, armed with snacks and good intentions, ready to accidentally change the galaxy once again.